bees represent annoying pests. We swat at them, we run in terror of being stung, and even use some common and flattering expressions like telling someone to buzz off. But for nearly 100 million years, our busy little bee friends have been our planet's most active pollinators. Close to 90% of the world's plants rely on pollinators for fertilization and reproduction, including many of the plants we use for food. For centuries, many cultures have recognized the importance of bees in ancient religion. Today, bees continues to provide humans with useful products like candles and cosmetics. It's the small creatures like bees that act as the first indicators of a healthy ecosystem, and our report card, as caretakers of our planet, has been less than average in recent history. Bee populations around the world have been declining at an unnatural rate. Scientists have called the phenomenon colony collapse disorder, and it has wiped out bees by the billions. One of the ways that humans have disrupted bee populations is by building over their natural habitats to create more housing and shopping centers. What's worse is that people continue to buy and sell harmful chemicals like pesticides that harm bees and other pollinators like butterflies and hummingbirds. Cosmetic pesticides are an especially great hazard to bees because of the dangerous chemicals that they introduce to nature. But not all hope is lost. Jackie's devoted an entire life to caring for bees, and she's noticed the sudden changes in the bee populations.
We've started to see a decline, and the last 3 have been very, very serious, up to 30 and 35% losses. That's an awful lot. If you consider any other type of agriculture, if you had 30% of your apple trees die in a year, or 30% of your cattle herd, that would be a huge hit.
Young people are also beginning to value the old traditions of working with nature and not against it. Beekeeping is becoming more popular with youth as more people become engaged with their environment.
I'm John Mardlin. I'm working with the Environmental Youth Alliance Beekeeper Apprenticeship program this summer. Bees are in trouble, as has been well publicized. There are a lot of different thoughts as to why bees are dying, and it's still very controversial. There's been a surge in the use of a pesticide.
Some of the theories are that the widespread use of pesticides in modern agriculture have been a detriment.
The pesticides explain probably fairly well why you're losing native bees and wild bees, but I think we've also bred diseases with our domesticated honeybees that are affecting native bees as well. So as we've been breeding bees, I think we've also bred mites and viruses.
And so when we're using a chemical for a long period of time and the mites develop a resistance, then only the strongest, most resistant mites are still alive, and they're what are breeding and regenerating. So what we're doing is we're selecting for mites that are resistant to the chemicals that we're using.
The way that, 10,000, 30, 40, 50,000 insects can work together to organize a hive in a workable manner is like absolutely mind-blowing. The fact that they know when they need to make a new queen, when they need to be getting more honey, when they need more pollen, when they need to make more drones. Just the fact that they can work together and organize themselves is like, in some ways they do it better than a town of people would.
And the most important thing, I think, is to remember that they don't think about it. A lot of it is pheromonal. Some of the controls on society come from the queen's pheromone and from the bee's pheromone. So when you think about that tiny little brain and what they can do, and how they adapt and how they use pheromones, it's really quite remarkable.
And considering that bees pollinate about 90% of the foods that we eat, the world would look a lot different without them.
Well, if we didn't have managed honeybees, there aren't enough wild bees to pollinate some of the food crops that we eat. So you wouldn't have the fruits and vegetables in the store that you would enjoy now. You wouldn't have a lot of the oranges and the lemons and that kind of thing. We wouldn't have the variety of apples. We wouldn't have the size of fruit. We wouldn't enjoy some of the crops that we get from greenhouses in the wintertime if we lost the bumblebees. We're managing bumblebees now for greenhouse production of cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes. So we wouldn't have the tomatoes if we couldn't manage to keep a good population of even managed bumblebees.
So take it from the experts. Even Einstein once said if bees died today, humans would cease to exist in 4 years.
So there's a hive in this garden that has been specifically designed for mason bee habitat, which is a local bee here. You can put them in your garden, and it will help bees to have good habitats where they can live and survive and pollinate your garden for you and the plants around you.
I'm going to throw this out as a challenge to you. Become a beekeeper.
It's easier than a dog but harder than a cat, so it lays somewhere in between there.
One of the easiest ways we can help bee populations recover is by letting nature exist in its natural state.
People need to wake up. People really need to start paying attention to what's going on and considering how important our natural systems are to us, and not just what they can do for them. But really frankly, people should think about what their natural systems can do for them, if that's what it takes. If it's a selfish motivation that gets you to worry about bees, yeah, you should be worried about your kids and your grandkids having bees around to look after them. So to people who are not worried about bees, worry. People do get stung, people do anger bees, but it's also not that big a deal. For most people, getting stung is just somewhat painful and really not that bad. You know, people say thank a farmer, just thank a bee as well.
I love to sit in front of a hive with my cup of tea and just watch them. It's just a fascinating thing.
So next time, before you take a swat at a bee, think about how different the world would be with one less.
You again!